Have you ever felt your heart shatter into 1,000 pieces, only to discover that from the deepest betrayal, a new strength can emerge? I'm Evelyn, and tonight you're about to witness a journey where betrayal becomes the catalyst for an explosive transformation. In this story, every secret, every twist of fate, unravels a truth that challenges everything you thought you knew about loyalty and redemption. This isn't just a tale of heartbreak, it's the ultimate confrontation with the darkness within. Here, amidst the echoes of past deceptions and the weight of unspoken truths, we dare to reclaim our narrative, turning pain into the very fuel of our resurgence. Welcome to Whisper's Story, where the most dramatic disruptions reveal our true strength. Stay with us, because the journey into the heart of betrayal is just beginning, and every moment is a step toward a breakthrough you won't want to miss. I remember the days before the storm struck with a bittersweet clarity. My name is Evelyn, and I once believed in the gentle rhythm of a well-ordered life. In our cozy suburban home, with its sunlit mornings and warm, inviting dinners, I harbored a deep sense of contentment. I had built my world on the small promises made over coffee and the tranquil hum of a routine that, to an outsider, appeared flawless. My husband, Daniel, had always been my anchor, a steady, loving presence whose smile could brighten even the darkest day. Yet, beneath this calm exterior, there was an undercurrent of restlessness, a secret that lay dormant until fate decided to unravel it all. Life had its own ways of scripting the unexpected, and mine took a dramatic turn when I discovered that the very foundation of my trust was about to crumble. One cool autumn evening, as I returned home from my weekly book club meeting, I noticed an unfamiliar glow from the study, a room Daniel rarely entered during the day. The soft hum of his computer mixed oddly with the silence of the night. A creeping suspicion turned into a prickle of anxiety on my skin as I moved closer to the door. I hesitated, wrestling with the desire for certainty and the dread of what I might find. In that moment, every heartbeat resonated like a drum of foreboding. Inside, I discovered an array of messages, a trail of digital footprints left behind. Cryptic exchanges, late-night texts, and even a photo that confirmed my deepest fear: Daniel had been seeing someone else. The messages were affectionate, laden with inside jokes and memories that did not belong to our shared past. The woman was none other than his ex, a figure from a chapter one had assumed was long closed. The shock that engulfed me was visceral. I felt as though a cold, invasive wind had swept through the house, sweeping away the warmth and trust that had once defined my everyday. The discovery was a devastating blow, a setback that plunged me into a period of confusion, anger, and relentless self-doubt. I sat there in the study, my mind spinning with a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. The soft ambient chords of an old, familiar melody in the background only heightened the raw edge of my emotions, as if the universe itself was underscoring the gravity of my loss. I replayed the cherished memories in my mind, the small, everyday rituals that once seemed so significant now tainted by the revelation of deceit. Trust, once taken for granted, had fractured into irreparable shards of doubt. In the silent aftermath of that discovery, I realized that something fundamental within me was shifting. A desire for justice, for reclaiming my identity and dignity, began to take root. Have you ever sensed an undercurrent of unspoken truths in your life, or faced a moment that shattered your preconceived notions of trust? What steps did you take to reclaim your peace? The days following that fateful discovery were a blur of conflicting emotions. I found myself standing at the crossroads of helplessness and determination, teetering on the edge of despair and resolve. The quiet hum of the suburban night turned into a relentless echo of betrayal. Each creak in the floor, each whisper of wind through the trees served as an unwanted reminder of the secret my husband had been keeping. One might say that life's setbacks often come unannounced, shattering the comforting facade of everyday routines. For me, the setback was not simply a personal crisis. It was a gateway to a larger, more profound exploration of privilege, self-worth, and justice. In our society, those of us who once felt secure in our social roles, especially within the neatly boxed identity of the supportive, loving wife, found ourselves suddenly questioning the very legitimacy of that role. I was forced to confront a painful truth: that even those who seemed privileged and protected could be ensnared in webs of discrimination and betrayal, where justice was often reserved for those with power or influence. As the raw pain gave way to a simmering anger, I began to question the fairness of it all. How was it that someone I had trusted with my heart could choose to live a double life, hiding behind shadows of secrecy? The more I pondered, the more I discovered that the betrayal was not just about infidelity. It was a deeply rooted injustice that spoke to the broader societal issues of privilege and discrimination. I was suddenly aware of the unsaid rules that governed relationships, where loyalty was expected and betrayal was often overlooked if it came from a certain social class or background. Worse still was the realization that my self-image, a mosaic of my own accomplishments, identity, and the many roles I had played, was now under siege. I became acutely aware of how women are often expected to forgive, to endure, and to fade quietly into the background, even when our hearts are shattered. Instead, I felt a newfound stirring, a call to transform that vulnerability into a source of strength. In the days that followed, I withdrew into myself, reflecting on memories both sweet and bitter. I would sit quietly in the dim glow of a table lamp, the only sound the distant hum of traffic outside, as I replayed every moment with Daniel. Every laugh, every whispered reassurance, turned into pieces of a puzzle that no longer fit together. The pain was palpable, yet it was intertwined with a strange sense of clarity. In the solitude of that gloomy evening, I recognized that I had to rebuild myself from the very ruins of my relationship. I began to understand that my path forward would require not just healing, but a calculated plan, a way to reclaim my life and assert my rightful dignity. It was time to transform the setback into a springboard for change. Rather than succumbing to the despair of betrayal, I decided to embrace my pain as a catalyst for action. I resolved to embark on a journey that was both personal and political, a journey that would challenge the existing norms of justice and privilege. The tension was rising, both inside me and in the world around me. Every whispered rumor, every cautious glance in the streets, amplified the gravity of my situation. I was no longer just a wife, I was a woman with a newfound mission, to expose the hypocrisies that allowed betrayal to go unchecked, and to reclaim the narrative of my life with a vengeance that was as unexpected as it was necessary. As I began to formulate the blueprints of my plan, I realized that the path to transformation would not be linear. Like the twisting trails of a mountain hike, the way forward would be filled with unforeseen obstacles and surprising turns. With a resolve that grew stronger with each passing day, I stepped away from the ruins of my past, prepared to forge a new identity out of the embers of betrayal. In moments of profound setback, have you ever discovered an inner strength you never knew existed? What did that moment teach you about your resilience and the possibility of transformation? In that period of solitude and contemplation, I found an unexpected clarity. The raw pain of betrayal was slowly morphing into a fuel, igniting a newfound resolve. I began to meticulously plan the ultimate revenge, a scheme not driven by fleeting anger alone, but by a deeper, more transformative need for justice. The plot of my reinvention was intricate. It would involve not only reclaiming my self-worth but also dismantling the facade that had allowed deceit to thrive in our so-called perfect world. Every detail was carefully laid out in the quiet sanctuary of my study. I transformed it into a war room, with sticky notes, journals, and scattered sketches mapping out every twist and turn. I pored over every memory of my marriage, dissecting the moments when love seemed genuine, only to later reveal the rifts that had always lingered beneath the surface. As I reassembled the narrative of my life, I realized that the plan had to go beyond a mere act of vengeance. It needed to be a catharsis, a reawakening of my personal agency. I decided that my revenge would be both public and deeply personal, a revelation that would expose the layers of deceit that had masked my husband's true self. The strategy was multifaceted, incorporating elements of planning, confrontation, and ultimately transformation. I began by collecting every piece of evidence, every text message, every email, every stray comment that hinted at his betrayal. It wasn't simply an act of retribution, but a reclaiming of truth from the depths of his lies. As I organized these pieces, I discovered unexpected details. There were moments of inadvertent kindness, a forgotten birthday gift, a subtle sign of guilt in his behavior, that hinted at the complexity of his character. These contradictions made my strategy even more layered. The revenge was not merely about inflicting pain, but about revealing the truth behind the mask of normality, exposing the contradictions of privileged lives that often cloak the darker realities of betrayal and injustice. The planning sessions were not without their own emotional turmoil. I found myself oscillating between moments of quiet reflection and bursts of anger that almost overwhelmed me. In those moments, I would light a single scented candle, a reminder of the calm and peace I longed to reclaim, while the ambient background of a slow, haunting violin filled the room. It was in this duality of destruction and hope that the true essence of my transformation lay. Determined, I started structuring my plan, a two-pronged approach that would deliver justice to both my husband and the societal norms that had long granted impunity to those of privilege. The first phase would be unveiling the truth in a manner that left no room for ambiguity, ensuring that every relevant detail was laid bare. The second phase was more introspective, a deliberate confrontation that forced both my husband and myself to reckon with the choices we had made, and the lives we had led. The planning wasn't confined to mere legal or emotional strategies. I began to explore creative outlets that would serve as the medium for my revenge. I decided to write journals, op-eds, and even a personal blog that slowly transformed into a confessional narrative of empowerment. In each word, I channeled the raw intensity of my experiences, striking a balance between the deep, biting sorrow of loss and the invigorating thrill of reclaiming power. I wrote about the double standards that allowed betrayal to be swept under the rug, the societal expectations that forced women like me into silence, and the transformation that was emerging from the shadows of my suffering. This creative pursuit gradually became a ritual. Every sunrise marked a new page, every sunset a chapter of closure, as I meticulously documented my journey from victimhood to an agent of change. Each sentence was imbued with a defiant hope, a declaration that, despite the betrayal, I would emerge stronger. I began to envision a future where my experiences could serve as a beacon for others trapped in the same cycle of pain and resignation. Sound effects played a subtle role in my process. I'd occasionally overlay the gentle strum of an acoustic guitar in the background as I reread my notes, the music lending an almost otherworldly quality to my introspections. It was as if the melodies carried whispers of encouragement, quiet, persistent reminders that I was not alone in this struggle. I became aware that my revenge was not just about personal satisfaction, it was about setting an example. I wanted to challenge the societal structures that allowed privileged infidelity to be dismissed as a mere personal failing. My plan was a message of justice, a rebellion against the normalization of betrayal, discrimination, and the silent acceptance of double standards. My revenge would expose not only the deceit of one man but the complicity of a culture that prized appearances over truth. Every step in my planning process was marked by a profound internal transformation. I was no longer the submissive, trusting wife who had once believed in the sanctity of marriage. I was metamorphosing into a woman of conviction, a woman who would use the ultimate revenge not to wallow in vindictiveness, but to reclaim her identity and ignite a spark of change in those who felt similarly betrayed. As the plan solidified, I began to see the outlines of the final confrontation with startling clarity. I wasn't certain of every twist that lay ahead, but I was determined to see the process through. The bittersweet irony was that while the path was paved with heartbreak and bitterness, it also promised a future of empowerment and renewal. I began to imagine a life where the pain of the past was transformed into the power of the future. A life where the scars were not just marks of betrayal, but testaments to my resilience. How have you transformed personal pain into a force for change? Can the fires of betrayal become the crucible for your own empowerment? Share your thoughts and join the conversation at Whisper Story. The day of reckoning arrived as suddenly as a thunderclap on an otherwise serene afternoon. I awoke with a profound sense of both apprehension and resolute determination, a cocktail of emotions that surged within me like a wild symphony. The culmination of months of careful planning had brought me to this defining moment, where every twist and turn of my journey converged into a confrontation that promised to redefine my existence. The house felt unusually quiet that morning, the familiar creaks and murmurs of our home were replaced by an eerie silence that amplified the gravity of what was about to unfold. I had arranged for a small gathering, a seemingly casual dinner party intended to bring together friends and acquaintances, many of whom were unaware of the brewing storm. Among the guests were individuals from various walks of life, women who had long concealed their own stories of sacrifice and subservience, men who embodied old ideals of privilege, and a few who had already begun questioning the status quo. I had crafted the event as both a social gathering and a subtle stage for revelation. The venue was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, with candles flickering across polished wooden tables and gentle strains of jazz floating through the air. Amid the warm ambience, I moved like a conductor orchestrating each moment with meticulous precision, my internal monologue echoing the fearless resolve I had nurtured for so long. As the evening progressed, I allowed the relaxed chatter and laughter to serve as a deceptive cover for the charged atmosphere simmering beneath the surface. My eyes, however, never strayed from Daniel. I watched him as he mingled with the guests, his demeanor a carefully constructed mask of charm and ease. I noted the way his gaze occasionally flitted toward the corner of the room, where an old friend, a woman who had once shared his history, his past, sat silently, her expression unreadable. This subtle interplay of glances and guarded smiles fueled the fire of my determination. And then, as if choreographed by fate itself, the moment arrived. I found myself in a quiet alcove of the room, away from the prying eyes and casual conversations. In that solitude, every stray whisper of the wind through the open window and every soft patter of footsteps seemed to underscore the gravity of the encounter that was about to transpire. I steeled myself for the confrontation ahead, summoning every ounce of inner strength I had cultivated over the preceding months. In that private space, my thoughts swirled like a vortex. I reviewed the complexities of my plan, the evidence gathered, the creative expressions of my pain, and the simple yet profound truth of my existence beyond the labels that had once defined me. There was a moment, an intense, heart-rending moment, when I almost faltered, questioning whether the pursuit of revenge might ultimately leave me as hollow as the trust that had been betrayed. But then I recalled the countless nights spent in tear-stained solitude, the raw anguish that had evolved into an ironclad resolve. I would not, allow myself to be defined by that betrayal any longer. The confrontation took an unexpected twist. In the midst of what I had planned as a quiet reckoning, Daniel appeared in the same space as me, almost as if drawn by the same magnetic pull of fate. His face, illuminated by the dim, ambient light, displayed an expression that I had never seen before. A mix of regret, confusion, and, unexpectedly, vulnerability. In that fleeting moment, the layers of pretense that had defined our relationship began to peel away, revealing raw emotions that neither of us had fully acknowledged until now. The tension became almost palpable. I felt as if the walls themselves were closing in, the subtle background strains of the jazz track intensifying the internal soundtrack of my emotions. In that charged atmosphere, every detail, the slight tremor of his hands, the visible catch in his breath, spoke volumes about the collision of our past and the promise of a radically different future. I realized then that the confrontation was not a simple collision of anger and betrayal. It was a crossroads where both of us stood at the intersection of our histories and our uncertain futures. The plans I had nurtured for months suddenly seemed both monumental and infinitesimally fragile, as if they balanced on the edge of a razor. The unexpected vulnerability in Daniel's eyes forced me to reconsider the nature of our pain, of our shared journey. A journey that had once been filled with hope, only to be derailed by secrets and infidelities. In that pivotal moment, the ultimate twist emerged from the depths of our tangled emotions. The confrontation was interrupted by the arrival of one of our closest friends, whose own story of betrayal and heartache echoed the very themes that had haunted my recent days. With a presence that was both soothing and electrifying, she reached out silently and joined me in that shadowed corner. The intervention, though subtle, acted as a catalyst, prompting a spontaneous catharsis among several of the guests who had silently borne the burdens of similar betrayals. The quiet intervention served to remind everyone present that while personal pain might be borne in isolation, transformation often came through shared experiences and unexpected solidarity. In that surge of raw human connection, I sensed that the true revolution had already begun. A revolution not of petty revenge, but of a broader, more encompassing justice. We were all, in our own ways, challenging a system that had long demanded that we accept our pain in silence. That night, as the party continued and the soft strains of the jazz faded into the background of whispered confidences and renewed resolve, I knew that the confrontation had sparked something unexpected. It was not simply the end of a relationship or the culmination of a revenge plan. It was the genesis of a transformation that would redefine not only my life but also the lives of those who dared to confront the injustices hidden in plain sight. When confronted with the unexpected vulnerability of someone who hurt you, how do you choose to respond? Can empathy coexist with the pursuit of justice? Share your thoughts with us and subscribe to the Whispers Story channel for more riveting narratives and community conversations. In the aftermath of that fateful confrontation, a slow but profound transformation began to take shape within me. As the days melted into weeks and the echo of that dramatic evening softened into a bittersweet memory, I discovered that the true essence of revenge lay not in inflicting pain on the one who betrayed you but in reclaiming your life and forging a new path from the ashes of despair. I set about reconfiguring my identity, much like an artist who reclaims their raw, splintered pieces of glass to craft a mosaic more brilliant and resilient than before. The transformation was both physical and spiritual. I revisited old passions that had once defined me, sketching, writing long into the night, and even volunteering for causes that spoke to the injustices that had marked my journey. Every step was an act of reclamation, a declaration that I was more than the sum of my shattered dreams. With every new sunrise, I reminded myself that I was a force to be reckoned with. A woman whose worth was not measured by the actions of another, but by the strength she cultivated in the face of adversity. I became a spokesperson for change, not just in my community, but in the way we all understood betrayal, privilege, and the silent burdens carried by many. I began holding small gatherings and speaking at local events, sharing my experiences not as a tale of bitterness, but as an inspiring journey toward liberation and personal justice. The more I opened up, the more I realized that the metamorphosis was contagious. I connected with other women who had faced similar betrayals. Friends, colleagues, even strangers who reached out with their own stories of recovery and resurgence. Our collective voices, once muted by shame and resignation, grew louder and more unified with every meeting. We formed a community that challenged the old narratives and demanded a new discourse. One where the personal pain of betrayal was channeled into the broader fight for justice and empowerment. In this new chapter of my life, art became my therapy, and every stroke of the brush on canvas or keystroke on my blog was a testament to my internal resurrection. I found that storytelling could bridge the gap between personal suffering and collective healing. I wrote articles that explored not only my journey but also the systemic issues of discrimination and double standards that had allowed such betrayals to persist. My words took on a new life, resonating with those who had once felt powerless, igniting a spark of rebellion against a society that too often silenced the voices of women. Amid these transformative changes, a remarkable twist emerged, one that even I did not see coming. Daniel, the man who had once symbolized betrayal in my life, reached out. His message was filled with remorse, regret, and a desire to understand the depths of his own actions. It was a gesture that, while painful, also offered a mirror to my own journey. I was confronted with the realization that transformation is not a linear path, but one fraught with relapses, unexpected reconciliations, and moments of clarity that can arise from the most unlikely sources. In dealing with his remorse, I found that forgiveness, true transformative forgiveness, was not about excusing the transgression, but rather about liberating myself from a cycle of lingering hate. I decided that my evolution would not be complete until I had allowed the wounds of betrayal the space to heal, and in that healing, find a measure of understanding for the complexities of human weakness. I met with him one final time, not as an adversary in a battle for vengeance, but as a fellow human being who had both fallen prey to societal expectations and made choices steeped in regret. That meeting was charged with quiet revelations and an unexpected sense of closure. A moment that underscored that sometimes, the ultimate revenge lies in rising above the need for retribution and embracing the full spectrum of our emotions. The transformation was a journey into uncharted territory, a delicate balance of letting go and moving forward, of holding on to painful memories just long enough to learn from them, and then releasing them into the ether of personal growth. I embraced the philosophy that our scars are not just marks of past sorrows but symbols of resilience, proof that we have survived the darkest nights to witness the dawn of new beginnings. During this period of transformation, I also began to challenge the societal narratives that had long dictated that women should live in the shadows of their own despair. I became a volunteer advocate for women's rights, using my story as a rallying cry for justice and empowerment. I organized seminars, wrote columns, and even started an online community where women could safely share their experiences. Slowly, I began to view my ultimate revenge not as an act of bitterness toward Daniel, but as an act of defiance against a system that had long diminished our experiences. Every evening as I returned home, I would light a candle in memory of the woman I once was, and in the gentle glow of the flame, I would whisper a silent promise to myself, to always choose growth, compassion, and the courage to stand alone when necessary. The soft strumming of a hopeful guitar in the background, paired with the quiet tapping of rain on the windowsill, became my new soundtrack, a melody of resilience, a hymn for renewal. In the fullness of time, I realized that the ultimate revenge was not just about exposing deceit or reclaiming lost pride, it was about transforming the very essence of my being. My journey became one of artistic liberation, spiritual evolution, and social justice. Through my writing, my advocacy, and my relentless pursuit of truth, I had turned the bitterness of betrayal into a powerful force for change. I had not only mended my own heart, but also contributed to a broader movement that aimed to restore dignity, challenge privilege, and honor the complexities of life. In your darkest moments, have you ever discovered the strength to transform your pain into a catalyst for change? How might you turn your experiences into a source of empowerment for yourself and others? Let us know your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to the Whispers Story channel for more stories that inspire, heal, and transform. In the final act of my journey, a chapter that felt both triumphant and haunting, I came to the realization that every heartbreak, every betrayal, and every twist in the path had led me to a moment of profound rebirth. The chapters of my story blended into a mosaic of love, loss, confrontation, and ultimately transformation. What I had once viewed as the ultimate revenge had gradually transformed into a deep understanding of myself, my place in the world, and the broader societal forces that shape our lives. I found that the transformative power of forgiveness, self-respect, and solidarity allowed me to reclaim my narrative. I began to appreciate the irony of my situation, that the betrayal which once threatened to shatter me had, in its wake, forced me to discover strengths that were previously hidden. The person I had become was fiercely independent, resilient, and wise, qualities forged in the crucible of adversity. My journey culminated in a grand, unforeseen twist. During one of the community seminars, as I recounted my experiences and shared the lessons I had learned, a woman from the audience approached me after the event. She was quiet and reserved, yet her eyes radiated a deep, familiar sadness. Over the course of an hour, she unfolded her own tale of betrayal and resilience, one that echoed the patterns of privilege, injustice, and social isolation that we both knew too well. In that moment, I realized that my story was not mine alone. It was a shared narrative that resonated with countless other women who had felt silenced by life's cruelties. Her story was a reminder that every setback is an opportunity to unite, to share strength, and to rebuild not just our personal lives but the very fabric of our community. I embraced her story as a vital piece of our collective transformation, a call for justice that went far beyond individual retribution. We had both been wronged, but in our shared journey, we discovered the healing power of solidarity and the promise of a brighter future. That final twist, the recognition that true revenge is not a solitary act of vengeance, but a communal assertion of dignity, sealed my transformation. No longer was I defined solely by the betrayal that had once devastated me. I was now a beacon for others, an emblem of hope in a world that all too often valued appearances over truth. In the quiet hours of the early morning, as the remnants of a stormy night receded into memory and the first blush of dawn painted the sky in hues of lavender and gold, I sat down at my old writing desk. The room was filled with soft light and gentle music, a calm, healing piano piece that matched the rhythm of my steady heartbeat. With a deep, cleansing breath, I began to write a new chapter of my life, one that celebrated resilience, self-love, and the possibilities that lie beyond the pain of betrayal. I closed my journal with a sense of completion, a final act of liberation. I understood at last that life's true revenge is not measured by the wounds we inflict on those who wrong us, but by the wounds we mend within ourselves. I had reclaimed my power, reshaped my destiny, and in doing so, had laid the foundation for a future filled with promise, purpose, and unyielding strength. As I shared my story with the world, I made a final plea to all the women listening. Share your experiences, your triumphs, and your struggles. Let this podcast be a collective voice, a tapestry woven from the threads of countless lives, each one contributing to the broader narrative of empowerment and justice. How have you turned your heartbreak into a stepping stone for growth? What steps can you take today to reclaim your narrative and transform your pain into a powerful force for change? Join the conversation by subscribing to the Whispers Story channel, and let's build a community where every story, every scar, and every triumph is celebrated. The journey from betrayal to transformation is a path marked by unexpected pitfalls and remarkable breakthroughs. In sharing my story, I have laid bare the raw emotions of a once shattered soul that found strength in vulnerability, purpose in pain, and ultimately, redemption in the act of reclaiming her identity. Life had imposed its betrayal on me, yet it was in that crucible of adversity that I discovered the true meaning of revenge, not as an act of retribution, but as an act of profound self-liberation. Now, as I move forward into a future brimming with new possibilities, I stand as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. I urge you, dear listener, to remember that within every setback lies the seed of transformation. Embrace your wounds, learn from your scars, and rise, brighter and bolder than ever. Thank you for walking with me on this journey, and for opening your heart to the power of healing, solidarity, and the unyielding quest for justice. This is Evelyn, inviting you to subscribe to the Whispers Story channel, where every narrative is a step towards a better tomorrow, and every story shared is a step towards our collective empowerment. What part of your journey has taught you the most about resilience and the power of transformation? Your story matters. Share it, and let us walk this path together. As our journey draws to a close tonight, remember, every wound we endure holds the promise of renewal. The echoes of betrayal have transformed into the anthems of empowerment, and from the ashes we rise, braver, wiser, and more resilient than ever. This isn't simply a farewell, it's an invitation. An invitation to reflect on your own story, to find solace in the scars, and to harness the transformative power of every twist in your life. In the echoes of this narrative, may you discover that the greatest revenge is the freedom to rebuild and to shine in your own truth. Thank you for sharing these powerful moments with us. If you felt a spark of transformation tonight, if you believe that your own story deserves to be heard, join our community. Subscribe to Whispers Story, and become a part of a movement where every whispered truth leads to a revolution of hope and resilience. Stay bold, stay curious, and until next time, keep your heart brave, your spirit unyielding, and your story alive. Thank you for listening to this episode of Whispers Story. Remember, your experiences are the foundation of a new, brighter future. Subscribe now, and together, we will continue to explore the rich tapestry of human emotion, growth, and the ultimate pursuit of justice and empowerment.